Okay. So yeah, we'll get started. Chris, I gave you the host back, so I think we should be good. We are recording, so we'll be good to go. This will be viewable later on. Um, so first and foremost, everybody, thanks for coming out tonight. And I'm very excited to hear this presentation. We've had Chris on here before, doing a presentation for us. It was about a month ago now, and creating I'm not going to remember the name perfectly, but creating an environment to bring birds back, or creating a bird-friendly environment, I think is what it was. And that was awesome. And as I was telling Chris before this, at CountryMax, the CountryMax stores, we're going to try to actually incorporate some of the tips that Chris had in that webinar, to create natural, native, actually, bird habitats in your backyard or around. And we're going to have kind of little displays that you can pick the native plants and for birds, pollinators, native species, just kind of a great concept overall. And it was an excellent webinar. So that's actually available on our website if anyone's interested in going to view that, because it was a great talk. And Chris did a great job with that. So the bald eagle really doesn't require any introduction here. I mean, it's pretty excited to be able to have this talk as well from Chris, and looking forward to learning more about the most American of all birds. It's going to be very interesting, and obviously a very popular part of the Montezuma Audubon facility is the bald eagles, and everybody gets really excited for it. So without further ado, I kick it off to Chris.
Brad, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Great to be with you. So glad you're joining us here to hear the story of the bald eagle and how it is now back from the brink. My name is Chris Lajewski. I'm Center Director at Montezuma Audubon Center. I'm also the Director of the Onondaga Lake Conservation Corps, which is an Audubon program. I am based at Montezuma Audubon Center up in Savannah, New York, just a short 15-minute drive north of the Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge. We are a separate facility. And I've been at Audubon for over 11 years. I've been in the conservation field for over 20. And I look forward to bringing this presentation to you this evening. I'm going to go through the presentation first, and then feel free to type questions into the chat box during the presentation. Whenever anything comes to your mind, feel free to type questions into chat. Brad is going to field those questions and get those to me at the end. I will make sure that we leave several minutes at the end for those questions. A little bit about the National Audubon Society, though, before we go into bald eagles, I do want to lay the foundation. Montezuma Audubon Center is one of 34 Audubon centers across the country. And overall, the National Audubon Society protects birds and the places that they need today and tomorrow throughout the Americas, not just here in North America, Central and South America as well, using science, advocacy, education, and on-the-ground conservation. Audubon state programs, nature centers, are volunteer-led chapter organizations like Genesee Valley Audubon in Rochester and Onondaga Audubon in the Syracuse area. Our partner organizations, altogether, we have an unparalleled wingspan that reaches millions of people each year to inform, inspire, and unite diverse communities in conservation action. Since 1905, National Audubon Society has had this vision where the world is full of people and wildlife, and we're thriving together. And Audubon is a nonprofit bird conservation organization. We have this hemispheric approach to bird conservation. We cannot just conserve habitat for birds in North America, because many of our birds are migratory. That means they move from wintering areas where they spend December through March, typically, sometimes a little bit longer, and they move northward to their breeding grounds, which typically is from June through August, sometimes a little bit later. And then we have these migratory corridors as well. So we now have a hemispheric approach to bird conservation. We conserve habitat for birds in North America, but also in the vital stopover areas in the southern states of the US, as well as down in the Caribbean islands, working with our partners in Central America as well. And then many of our songbirds, the warblers, the thrushes, the vireos, and others, they go as far south as South America to spend the winter months. We're working with organizations all across the Western Hemisphere for birds. Bringing it a little bit closer to home here, Audubon has a tremendous network of chapters. These are largely volunteer-led organizations affiliated with National Audubon Society. I mentioned two prominent ones we have in upstate New York. And each dot that you see on this map here is an Audubon chapter. There are hundreds of chapters across this country. And those shaded areas are the regions within the chapter. Okay, so you can pick out the Genesee Valley Audubon dot right there, and there is our Onondaga Audubon chapter right there. And Onondaga Audubon actually stretches well north up towards the St. Lawrence River Valley in northern New York. So these are vitally important on the ground organizations that are affiliated with Audubon that help us protect birds. They also help us advocate for birds. We have state offices. Not every state has an Audubon office, but we do have one here in New York, and that is located in Albany, right here. We have centers, 34 centers across this country, and Montezuma Audubon Center being right here. We also have sanctuaries. These are Audubon owned and managed properties, and those are in red that you see here on the map. And then lastly, we are guided by our flyways. Traditionally, migratory birds follow a single flyway. It doesn't always work out that way, but most of the birds that we see here in upstate New York largely focus on and migrate along the Atlantic flyway. Now, sometimes Mississippi and Central and even Pacific flyway birds find their way over here to the Atlantic and vice versa, but generally that doesn't happen. It's really cool when it does happen because those are really unusual birds that we see if they're coming in from a different flyway, and then people flock to areas like Montezuma or the South Shore of Lake Ontario to see them. But we work very closely with our Audubon offices and centers and sanctuaries all across this Atlantic flyway right in here. So from Maine through New York, through our centers in New York and Connecticut, and down through the mid-Atlantic states and the Southeast United States, this is where Montezuma Audubon Center and Audubon New York work very closely with Audubon colleagues. Now, a little bit even closer to home here, what is this Montezuma Wetlands Complex where I work? Well, it's 50,000 acres. To put that into context, that is twice the size of Rochester, 4 times the size of Syracuse. It's a huge area, a mosaic of habitats, everything from upland forests to wetlands like marshes and swamps, grassland habitats, waterways, and agriculture, all mixed into one confined area. We call that area Montezuma Wetlands Complex. And that includes, of course, the 10,000-acre Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge, right down here straddling the Thruway and routes 5 and 20, and about 9,000 acres of state land up here in Savannah, New York. And Montezuma Audubon Center is right on Route 89 in Savannah, right here. This Montezuma Wetlands Complex is Audubon's first globally important bird area, the first ever. And we are important because we are home to hundreds of thousands of migratory waterfowl that pass on through here during the spring and the fall months. Most are just passing through, not stopping and breeding, generally not spending the winter with us because we freeze over completely. The marshes, the waterways freeze over. So these birds have to go down to maybe the southern parts of the Finger Lakes that don't freeze over completely, or down to the mid-Atlantic states to spend the winter months. We have countless recreational, educational, and volunteer opportunities at Montezuma Wetlands Complex. All the tours that take place at Montezuma Wetlands Complex take place out of this facility, Montezuma Audubon Center. We are a year-round facility, open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have 2 miles of trails on 200 acres of land that is managed and owned by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. This is a unique partnership between Audubon, a nonprofit, and the state agency, New York State DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation. So The trails are open daily from sunrise to sunset. You can be on the trails even if the Audubon Center isn't open. And we hope to see you out at Montezuma Audubon Center very soon. If you're interested in about our programs and our driving tours and hiking tours, we're going to be getting ready for canoeing and kayaking here very soon. Check out our website, ny.audubon.org/Montezuma. I'll make sure that you get that website at the end of the program with my last slide as well. Now, on to the bald eagle. As Brad was saying, America's bird. It's been our national symbol for well over 200 years, since 1782. It is one of the largest birds of prey. Like all birds of prey, the female bald eagle is larger than the male. She has about an 8-foot wingspan when she's fully mature adult bird, compared to the male bald eagle, about a 6.5-foot wingspan. Slightly different length of bird as well, or height, I should say. So a few inches difference in height. The female is going to be slightly taller than the male as well. And of course, the female weighs quite a bit more than the male. So this goes for all birds of prey. The female larger than the male. Hawks, owls, falcons, eagles as well. Typically, bald eagles will live for a significant length of time if they can survive the first year. They can live anywhere from 25, 35, or maybe even more years in the wild. Significantly longer if they're in captivity. They can live up to 50 years in captivity, where they get fed daily and they don't have to worry about predators and they're well taken care of. Bald eagles typically mate for life, and they reach full maturity by the time they're 4 or 5 years old. Typically, I think of 5 years old, although sometimes you can find 4-year-old bald eagles mating, getting paired up, making a nest, and mating. That does happen. Their primary food is fish. However, they are opportunistic hunters, and they will take carrion, which is dead food. They will also take small mammals, sometimes snakes, and sometimes smaller birds. Small ducks or injured geese are also on the menu of the bald eagle. I want to play the voice of the bald eagle, because sometimes you see a bald eagle on a television screen or on a movie screen, and you don't hear the bald eagle call. You hear another bird's call. So first, I'm going to play the bald eagle voice for you now. So quite a timid voice. That's all it is. Well, TV producers and movie producers over the years have thought that that is just not quite robust enough to put on the big screen or the small screen. And a lot of times when you see the bald eagle flying across the screen, you hear the red-tailed hawk screech. And that's not a bald eagle. That's red-tailed hawk. So I know Stephen Colbert was known for that when he was on the Stephen Colbert show back on Comedy Central years ago. Tried to get him to change that, but and offered to be his bird consultant on the Colbert Report. Didn't work out. A little bit more about the biology of our national bird. They typically nest in large trees near water. It doesn't have to be on water, but it should be near water because, again, their favorite food is fish. They're going to be in swamp habitats, large trees, 60 to 100 feet tall, maybe even more. their nests are made out of sticks and twigs and branches. You can see here in this slide image of a couple of parents feeding a chick. And so sticks and twigs and branches, they reuse their nest typically every year. The same pair will stay around the nest. They may not be in the nest, but they're going to be around the nest within a couple miles to keep an eye on it. Even after the chick fledges, they're going to stay nearby, make sure another bald eagle pair doesn't take it over, or maybe an osprey doesn't take it over when it returns to its territory in late March or early April. Most times, bald eagles, females, will lay 2 eggs. Sometimes it's 1 and sometimes it's 3, usually 2. There's about a month-long incubation period where the female adult will sit on the eggs for 30 to 35 straight days, not leaving those eggs. The male adult will go off, grab fish, and bring it back to her so she does not have to leave those eggs. And that is vitally important because bald eagles will lay their eggs in February or March when it's generally still winter time up here in New York State, and there could be a lot of snow falling. It could be bitterly cold. The female adult has to keep those eggs warm so they stay viable, so they can reach hatching stage. After the chicks are hatched, they're going to be fed by both parents, mostly fish, sometimes mammals, and sometimes reptiles and amphibians, for about 3 months or so. And by the time they get to 3 months of age, they are large enough and they can start flying. They learn how to fly from their parents. They've been watching their parents fly around the nest, and they will fly with their parents for another month or 2. Because the next stage is for them to learn how to hunt. Again, they're going to be utilizing waterways and wetlands and get the fish. So at about 4 months of age, they are hunting then on their own. And after that, mom and dad bald eagles say, well, you're on your own, kid. Good luck to you. Now, sometimes juvenile bald eagles try to stay around with their parents, get some food from them, stay nearby to be protected from predator, which could be a great horned owl. Sometimes osprey are pretty ferocious and will go after bald eagles, especially juveniles. But generally, bald eagle adults push the juveniles out of the territory where they were hatched by the time they're 4 to 5 months of age. And most of the bald eagles are going to survive the first year, but not all. And that first year of life is the hardest for bald eagles, other birds, and really other wildlife as well. Got a series of images now that I want to show you that will demonstrate how bald eagle plumage changes over the first 5 years of life. So first year bird, spring, before they leave the nest, they're pretty much going to be all brown, nearly all brown from head to wings to tail. You may see a few gray feathers in there, but generally it's all brown. And notice that bill is almost entirely brown, very little yellow on it. Now, a second year bird is going to have this mottled look, this brown and white on the chest, on the underside of the wings. Notice there is no white head and no white tail. So this is what we would call maybe a toddler bald eagle. Now we get to say a tween bald eagle. So this would be, in human years, this would be maybe 12 or 13-year-old. So 3 years of age, notice still mottled white and brown on the chest, underside of the wings as well. Also notice the head starting to change color, starting to get some white up on the head, starting to get a little bit more white on the tail as well. And the bill is starting to turn a little bit more yellow. So 4-year-old bird, nearly fully mature. Again, some of these birds may start to to breed at 4 years of age. Notice it's more of a salt and pepper look up on top of the head. It's mostly white, with some brown in there. The chest is still mottled, but more brown than white. And that bill is almost entirely yellow now. And then year 5, fully mature bird. We have fully mature bird. So back to all brown on the wings and the back and the chest. The plumage on the head is all white. Plumage on the tail is all white. Yellow bill. And this is a fully mature bird. Now, the bald eagle will continue to molt or occasionally lose feathers and grow new feathers, but the new feathers that grow are identical to what you see here. So after 5 years of age, the look of the bald eagle doesn't change. And unless there's a band or a tag on a bald eagle that corresponds to a database where we can decipher when the bird was banded and hatched, we aren't going to be able to say exactly how old that bald eagle is after it reaches 5 years of age. Now, did you know bald in bald eagle doesn't mean it doesn't have any hair or feathers on the head? No, it's actually short for piebald, which means spotted or patched. This is very appropriate given not only the fully mature bird and the plumage there, but also that speckled nature of the juvenile birds, all that brown and white speckled on the chest and the belly and the underside of the wings as well. So next time you're looking to wow your friends and family or looking for a cool fact to share around the water cooler tomorrow, go ahead and use that one. Now, I've got to get into the history of the bald eagle. So that was the biology of it. Now we're going to get into the history of it and what happened to our bald eagle. So when the bald eagle was named our national bird, there were as many as 100,000 bald eagles living in these lower 48 United States. Many more, of course, up in Alaska, huge population in Alaska. But we had roughly 100,000, not exactly sure how many, but approximately 100,000. And during that, between 1860 or so and 1960, right here in New York State, we had 72 identified nests, known nests where bald eagles were nesting. There were many, many more, but the ones that we knew of were about 72 between 1860 and 1960. So pretty significant number. Now, when John James Audubon was walking around eastern U.S. and out towards Kentucky back in the early 1800s, painting birds of America, he created this incredible work of art, the Birds of America, where he painted 435 life-size images of birds. And we are so fortunate to have a replica of Birds of America at Montezuma Audubon Center. But as he was going around painting the birds, he loved birds. He fell in love with them. He turned out to be a great artist as well. He was noticing that even in the early 1800s, 18-teens, 1820s, number of birds was on the decline. And largely that is because of habitat loss. That is humans that were changing the natural environment to make it more suitable for their own lives. And John James wrote about that. Fast forward now to the 1960s, 1970s. Remember back at the beginning of this country, we had hundreds of thousands of bald eagles across the United States. Well, by 1960s, we only had a little over 400 nesting pairs of bald eagles down here in the lower 48 states. And in 1976, there was only one nesting pair of bald eagles in the whole state of New York. Remember, we had 72, at least 72 known locations where bald eagles were nesting before this time. Bald eagle population was decimated, and it was on the verge of extinction. Why? What happened? Well, I've referenced this a couple times already. Habitat loss. And the wetlands were really the critical habitat that was being lost across this country. This is data from the US EPA, going back a couple hundred years ago when the country was founded, 1780s, right up on through to the 1980s. These numbers indicate the percent of wetland acres lost in each state. Here in New York, we lost 60% of our wetlands. Our wetlands were destroyed here in New York. We weren't alone. Look all across the Northeast United States, 30, 20, 30, sometimes 70%. In the case of Connecticut, 74% of wetlands were lost, were altered, were destroyed, drained for agriculture. Swamps were harvested, the trees were harvested to build buildings and homes, for people to live in. Midwest states, 90% wetlands lost in Ohio, 91% out in California. People didn't value wetlands at the time. They didn't understand how wetlands clean their drinking water, helped reduce flooding in their communities, provided habitat for birds of the wildlife, provided food for them as well, provided food for humans as well. It was just not a habitat that was valued. Also, people shot bald eagles. Back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, the millinery trade was very common, and people shot bald eagles to put feathers on people's hats, women's hats primarily. Some cases they put entire birds up on the hat, and bald eagles were shot for their plumes. Great egrets, snowy egrets, and even small songbirds like the rose-breasted grosbeak were harvested for their plumes for the millinery trade, further declining bald eagle population. There was a bounty on bald eagles in Alaska, and homesteaders and fox farmers were complaining about the vast number of bald eagles up there, taking fox as they left their dens. Fishermen and anglers were complaining about bald eagles killing large quantities of spawning salmon. And because of the pioneers' limited abilities to gather food, make money, and support their families in remote locations, the situation was seen as unsustainable. And so the state of Alaska agreed that eagles were the culprits and that their livelihoods of the residents were being threatened. So 1917, the Alaska Bounty Law was enacted, which paid 50 cents for a pair of bald eagle feet. And by 1923, the price was increased to $1. And that was a significant amount of money back then that could supplement the homesteaders' meager incomes and reduce the number of eagles felt to be endangering the ability to feed their families. But we lost hundreds of thousands of bald eagles as a result of this action. But the straw that broke the eagle's back was DDT. DDT, a pesticide developed right around the end of World War II, and it was used all across this country, including in Montezuma, to control insect populations. Scientists at the time, though, didn't understand what DDT was doing to the ecosystem, how it could impact birds, bald eagles, the entire food chain, to humans. Here's what happened in terms of the bald eagle food chain. So bald eagles, the DDT was sprayed, say, on a residential area to control insects. And well, when it rained, the DDT was washing off of vegetation, grass, and flowing into the waterways, maybe getting into a wetland nearby. Well, the producers, the small plant organisms that lived in that wetland, were starting to absorb DDT at a very small level, low level. But those primary producers, those plants, were getting eaten by the primary consumers, let's say some small fish. Okay, and DDT started to accumulate. The quantity started to increase as you move up the food chain. Those smaller fish were getting eaten by larger fish, which ultimately were eaten by bald eagles. And look at how the concentration of DDT increased as you go up the food chain. Now, it wasn't the DDT itself that killed adult bald eagles and juvenile bald eagles. The DDT, though, caused the bald eagle eggshells to be so thin and brittle in the nest that when the female adult went to incubate the eggs, she cracked them. And we were not getting any chicks surviving, even to hatching stage. So we went from hundreds of thousands of bald eagles across this country down to just a few hundred nesting pairs. Dozens and dozens and dozens of nests across New York State, down to just one last nest. And where was that nest? South end of Hemlock Lake, just south of Rochester, right here in the Finger Lakes region. That was the last nest. Bald eagle was almost wiped out of New York State. Rachel Carson changed everything. She wrote the book, Silent Spring, which highlighted the impact that DDT was having on ecosystems, on birds, like the bald eagle, on humans. And she wrote this back in the 60s. She started to change the mindset of people in this country. People were passionate about this. They now understood what was going on in the ecosystem. They didn't want to lose the national bird. They didn't want to lose their springtime robins in their backyard. They didn't want to lose their reptiles and amphibians in the nearby wetland, enjoying the calls of the spring peeper and the American toad during the spring season. So people rose up and said, no, we are not going to lose our national bird. We need to do something. They started to call their legislators, meet with their legislators, write letters to their legislators saying, we need to act. We cannot let this go on. And as a result of people speaking up on behalf of birds, taking action, bald eagle started to come back because of a national ban on DDT in the 1970s. The Endangered Species Act here in this country, New York State Endangered Species Program, all helped lay the foundation for the bald eagle to come back. And in 1976, right here in New York State, right here in my backyard practically, I'm so fortunate to be able to work in this place, we started the first ever bald eagle restoration program. It was right here in this Montezuma wetlands complex. This program was called a hacking program, which sounds terrible, but hacking in biological terms means you take individual animals from one population over here and relocate them to a new area over here to jumpstart that population. You don't take too many from over here, just enough to start a new population here. This is the first of its kind anywhere in North America. And it was right here in Montezuma. Now, why Montezuma? Well, huge area. I mentioned that before, 50,000 acres, and much of that is wetland habitat. We have several rivers that flow through the area and streams. Cayuga Lake is right at the south end of the complex as well. We have so many fish species, dozens and dozens of fish species, and millions of birds that could provide food for bald eagles. Relatively limited disturbances. We certainly have people living within the Montezuma Wetlands Complex, and there are roadways and throughway, but generally a lot more birds than people out in the Montezuma Wetlands Complex. Even though DDT was used within the Montezuma Wetlands Complex, for some reason, can't explain it thoroughly, the fish were relatively devoid of DDT. So because of all these reasons, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, New York State DEC, and our college and university professors determined that Montezuma Wetlands Complex was the perfect location for the first ever bald eagle hacking program. And just to orient you further here, this Montezuma Wetlands Complex is right between Rochester, Syracuse, and Ithaca. About 2 million people live within an hour's drive of this wetlands complex. And the wetlands complex, as I said before, it's got a mosaic of habitats. Look at all this wetland habitat. You've got forest habitat, great nesting area, great feeding area, and this was perfect. I've got a special treat for you now because these photos I'm about to show you here haven't been seen by very many people. These are images that I got from the Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge office when I was preparing this presentation that I've been giving now for 11 years. So this is going back a ways. But these are images of that hacking tower and the process of raising these bald eagles at Montezuma that were introduced from other areas. And I'm going to explain the whole process here now over these next several slides. So this hacking tower, where is it? And you're probably wondering, can I see it? I want to go to it. I want to experience this. And it is at the Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge Shockey Pool area. It's not at the observation tower that you can go to right on Route 89 today. It's on the west side of Shockey Pool. And because the trees have all grown up around the tower, you really can't see it. There is no public access to the hacking tower at this point. We're hopeful that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will at some point here soon open up that area and maybe create a trail, a very limited trail to allow people to see this tower. It still stands to this day. Okay, so these bald eagles, they were brought in from the Midwest states, so Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, and then some others were brought in from Maryland. Again, those states had ample supply of bald eagles still. Yes, we lost some bald eagles in those states, but they still had a healthy population. They could stand a few bald eagles coming to New York. When the bald eagles were brought to this hacking tower, they were placed, we placed these pelagic tags, these wing tags, these talon tags, and radio transmitters on the bird so we can document the entire process here. This had never been done before. We need to document everything. Once the birds were fitted with all these devices, they were hoisted 40 feet up to the top of the tower. And these were the first two bald eagles that were brought to the tower. It's a male and female, not from the same nest. So they're not related. This was June 1976. This was groundbreaking news. People were paying attention to this, watching it on the news, reading it in the papers, coming to Shockey Pool. on the east side where the observation tower is, and trying to get a glimpse of the activity on the west side of the pool. Fascinating. And biologists were monitoring the activity in the nest from a small, very small black and white TV about 100 yards away. We didn't want to lose the bald eagles to lose their fear of humans. Didn't want them to basically identify food with humans. So we monitored them from a safe distance. Many individuals were involved in this, from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, New York State DEC, Pete Nye, Mike Allen. We still have Pete Nye around. He's living out in the Albany area. Unfortunately, Mike Allen recently passed away, but I had the opportunity to meet him and hear his version of this story, firsthand account, and see his images of this. So lucky to have met Mike just few short years ago. And so we brought these birds in June, and those eagles fledged. They started flying around on their own in mid-July. So, they were 4 months old. They were born in February or March, and by mid-July they're 4 or 5 months old. So they're flying around. We couldn't teach them that. Instincts kicked in. They started flying around Shockey Pool, the nearby Clyde River. But they would always return back to the tower to feed. We fed them fish using a bald eagle hand puppet. Again, not wanting to lose their fear of humans. And by the end of September, they started to fish on their own. Again, we couldn't teach them that. We were hoping they could fly and hunt on their own. Instincts kicked in, and they started to do it. So between 1976 and 1980, 23 bald eagle chicks were brought to that hacking tower. Started with those two in 1976. As I said, Midwest states and Maryland provided those birds, and the biologists at the time couldn't believe it, because those first two birds from 1976 were seen nesting together in 1980 just outside of Watertown, New York. That's about as the eagle flies about 100 miles away. Amazing. They laid 2 eggs up there near Watertown. One egg didn't survive. One chick fledged, and it was a great success. I followed up with the refuge staff because I've been asked this question, and I'm sure some of you are wondering, how long did that adult pair stay together? How long did they survive? How many eggs did they lay? And I don't have that information. We don't know exactly. I'm going to have to dig around a little bit more to find that out. But it was such a popular and successful program at Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge that this hacking project was relocated out to the west, out by Batavia, to the Oak Orchard Wildlife Management Area. And that too was successful in bringing in bald eagles from other parts of the country, largely Alaska, to jumpstart our bald eagle population here in New York. Then another success happened in 1987 when we had the first bald eagle nest at the Montezuma Wetlands Complex in over 30 years. Amazing program. So the hacking program overall lasted from 1976 to 1989. With just a short time at Montezuma. And during that 13-year time frame, 200 bald eagles were brought to New York State, most of them from Alaska. And the hacking program ended in 1989 when there were 10 bald eagle nests in New York. Biologists thought at that time that was going to be enough to jumpstart the population, and they could now thrive on their own without bringing other bald eagles here into New York. Sure enough, the biologists were right. Now we have over 400 nesting pairs across New York State. And over 300,000 eagles in the lower 48 states. That's an amazing conservation success story. Oh, and by the way, we have 15 nests at Montezuma Wetlands Complex now, up from 0 in the mid 1980s. They're a daily sight for us. It's just great. Never gets old either. Got a couple of maps here I want to show you. These are breeding bird atlas maps from this one from the 1980s, the first ever New York State breeding bird atlas. The next one is going to be 20 years down the road. So this first breeding bird atlas shows you the blue dots where bald eagles were confirmed to be nesting. Here's the Hemlock nest, and here's the Watertown nest. And then the others were possible or probable nesting locations in the Adirondacks, the Catskills. Here's Oak Orchard, Tonawanda area, and Allegheny, a possible nest down at Allegheny State Park. And that was it for bald eagles. Fast forward 20 years. Look at Montezuma now starting to light up here. Several confirmed nests. Adirondack has many confirmed nests. Catskills, the Hudson River, the Southern Tier. Here's Oak Orchard and Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge, Buffalo, Southern Lake Ontario shoreline. Bald eagles are now becoming common. 2000, 2005. Some more recent data here, not breeding bird data, but this is midwinter bald eagle data that I've helped collect at Montezuma Wetlands Complex. Staff, volunteers fan out across the Montezuma Wetlands Complex, typically in early January, to count the number of bald eagles we have. And we haven't done it the last couple of years because of the pandemic. Hopefully we can get back to it this coming year. But you can see the trajectory of wintering bald eagles at Montezuma, starting off here in 2012, where we had fewer than 40. Up here on average now, we're averaging now about 70 bald eagles during the winter months at Montezuma. Now, where are you going to go to see bald eagles? Well, I've highlighted now on this map here for you the areas within Montezuma Wetlands Complex that are great places to see them. Basically, all the public land, it's all 20,000 acres of the 50,000 acres is public land, and that's a great spot to see a bald eagle. Every place from Montezuma Audubon Center to Howlands Island and Carn Cross Road area, Sand Hill Crane Unit, Knox Marcellus Marsh. Here's that Shockey Pool area. We've got a few nests within Shockey Pool right now. The main wildlife drive at the National Wildlife Refuge and the north end of Cayuga Lake all has bald eagle nests. These dots here, both the ones with the little white symbol on it, as well as those that are just blue in color, are bald eagle sightings in 2021 as confirmed by eBird. eBird is an online database. Anyone can enter bird sightings into eBird. Just go to ebird.org. It's a great way to keep track of your bird lists for your backyard, for your communities. When you travel around the world, you can keep track of the birds that you see. And you can see that bald eagle sightings last year, my goodness, in the Rochester community, the South Shore of Lake Ontario. Here's Braddock Bay. Here's Irondequoit Bay. The Erie Canal and the whole downtown area. The Genesee River flows up into here, so the falls are right around in here. South of Rochester, the Finger Lakes region, of course, as well. And here's Montezuma. Look how that's glowing now. Just incredible. A slight shift now in view going to the east. These are more like Finger Lakes region bald eagle sightings. Again, to orient you, here's Montezuma. they're everywhere. The whole north end, central area of Cayuga Lake. We got multiple bald eagle nests. Here's Seneca and Canandaigua lakes right here. Looking out here, here's the Seneca River going out towards Syracuse. And look at Syracuse. Look at that. What's going on at Syracuse? Well, here's what's going on in Syracuse. Onondaga Lake used to be the most polluted lake in the country. No more. It is a thriving ecosystem. Birds, wildlife, people are coming back to the lake. Audubon's been involved with that. I'm so proud to be a part of that project as well. And together with so many partner organizations, we've helped restore 90 acres of wetlands and shoreline. And Onondaga Lake is now home to as many as 100 bald eagles during the winter months. 100. You don't have to go to Alaska anymore to see that number of bald eagles. That's an incredible turnaround. And all these birds would not be here if it wasn't a healthier ecosystem. Got many programs through our Onondaga Lake Conservation Corps program. Go to our website, ny.audubon.org/OLCC for Onondaga Lake Conservation Corps to see all of our upcoming programs and special events out there. But right behind Destiny USA, downtown Syracuse, you sit in the parking lots and the bald eagles will be sitting in those trees there on Murphy's Island. Take a nice little walk, 5-minute walk down the creek walk, down to the lakeshore, and you'll see bald eagles during the winter months on the ice. That whole western and southwestern shoreline there, bald eagles in the trees there too. Amazing transformation. Now, even though winter's done and the ice is thawed and a lot of the bald eagles have left the Onondaga Lake watershed, we still are going to have probably about a dozen bald eagles spend the entire year at Onondaga Lake. They're not nesting at Onondaga Lake yet. This is a roost site, an area where bald eagles congregate and feed together and spend time together during the winter months. They're not nesting along the lake shore yet. We think it's only a matter of time before 2 of those bald eagles say, hey, this is amazing. Let's stay here and let's not travel 100, 200, 300 miles away to our breeding area. So as my time is about to set here on with you today, I want to thank you, first of all, for joining me. And thank you again, Brad and CountryMax, for allowing me the opportunity to tell the story of the bald eagle. It has to be told. So many of our youth are not going to be aware that there was a time when bald eagles were not common. They were not a daily sight for us at Montezuma, in Rochester, in Syracuse. They will just know a time when, yes, there are bald eagles around. So we have to tell this story so that we don't go back to the way it was, where bald eagles were nearly extinct here in New York State, where habitats were destroyed, feathers were taken, chemicals were sprayed on them and their habitats, which caused them to become nearly extinct. We can also tell them about the opportunities that we have where people can speak up for bald eagles, take action on behalf of birds and other wildlife, plant native vegetation, contact their representatives and encourage them to pass laws that protect birds and other wildlife. And as we do that, then we are going to continue to improve this earth for not only these birds that we share this place with, but also for ourselves. So I thank you very much. Here are some ways to get in touch with me. Again, you can go to montezuma.audubon.org to see all of our upcoming tours and special events, both in-person and virtual programming that we offer. Here's information about our Onondaga Lake Conservation Corps program, ny.audubon.org/OLCC. We are going to be at Onondaga Lake this Saturday for an Earth Day cleanup. Great opportunity to probably see some bald eagles down there with me. I hope to see you there. We've got a link to the registration page on that website. So Brad, I've left a few minutes. Happy to take any and all questions that folks have asked during the last hour or so.
We've got some here. I'll start at the top here, kind of from the earlier ones. So there's a little bit of questions that were about your earlier part. I don't know this specifically. This might mean something more to you. We had a question. Will the trail construction on Murphy Island scare away eagles on Onondaga Lake? Which actually kind of fits in with the end here. But
Yeah, thank you for that question. The Murphy's Island Trail is unfortunately a done deal. That is a trail that is being constructed by Onondaga County. It's a dead end trail right through this bald eagle roost at Onondaga Lake. The bald eagle roost is New York State's largest bald eagle roost. And we were working with Onondaga County. We worked with the city of Syracuse, DEC, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to try to get the trail off of Murphy's Island. Work the trail around Murphy's Island, some other way around Destiny, out Hiawatha Boulevard, down over to the Onondaga Lake Parkway, but leave Murphy's Island alone. Unfortunately, they have all the permits now for that project. We spoke up at county public hearings. We mobilized hundreds of people to speak up against the trail and encourage the county to put the trail somewhere else, not through the largest wintering roost of bald eagles in the state. And well, we lost. But in another way, I feel like we won because we were able to bring so much awareness to the lake and the bald eagles and the thousands of ducks and waterfowl species that are there during the winter months as well, so that people now see Onondaga Lake as a community asset. And we know that because so many more people are coming out and enjoying the lake. They're hiking the trails, other trails that exist in a safe area. They're paddling in the lake. We're leading canoeing and kayaking trips during the summer months now. They're helping us restore the 90 acres of wetlands and shoreline. So, while that trail looks to be moving forward, and there's really nothing, we've lost all of our options here at this point. We did raise awareness, and we engaged the Central New York community in this project and in this process, and we hope that they stay involved and stay engaged with conservation efforts at Onondaga Lake and beyond moving forward.
okay, this one might have been answered during the next slides, but will the underside of eagles throughout childhood stay brown and white? I think that was.
Yeah, so as they're going through the first 4 years, it's this, well, it's actually years 2, 3, and 4, they're mottled or piebald and white and brown. And then year 5, they go back to all brown on the chest and underside of the wings. And then they're fully mature. And getting back to that first question, that was a long-winded answer, and I apologize for that. But the county did say that they will shut the trail down, put up a gate of some sort to prevent people from going out onto the island during the winter months when all the bald eagles are there. We still have concerns about that. Are people going to listen and not go around the gate to access the trail and enjoy a nice, warm, late February, early March day? I'm concerned about the roost. I'm concerned. Yeah. But the county said they would close the trail during that winter time period.
Okay, the next one is, and I don't know if this might be the same one. Again, I'm not I'm in Rochester, so Syracuse is a little different. So the Creek Walk extension, will that have a big impact? I'm worried we'll lose the gems in Syracuse. Is that the same?
Yeah. That person, thank you for that question. Right. That's the end of the creek walk. So you walk down Onondaga Creek walk, you get there, a beautiful view of the lake. And boy, that would have been just a perfect spot to put a nice observation area, and people can see bald eagles from there from a safe observation area. But the county is planning on putting that trail through Murphy's Island now.
And then, is avian flu a large concern for eagles in this area?
Haven't seen any reports of bald eagles being impacted by avian flu. We did have a few waterfowl succumb to avian flu during the last month, when hundreds of thousands of ducks, geese, and swans were migrating through the Montezuma wetlands complex. There were just a small handful of snow geese that died, and the DEC biologist sent them down to Cornell lab for testing, and they came back positive for avian flu. Fortunately, songbirds do not seem to be impacted by avian flu at this point. So Audubon and New York State DEC are not recommending people take down bird feeders. Now, if that changes, we'll certainly let you know about it and get it out in the media. But at this point, it's okay to continue feeding with black oil sunflower seed and thistle seed. And as we get into warmer part of the year, hummingbird feeders will be okay as well. Now I mentioned, bald eagles are scavengers. So it is possible that a bald eagle, could feed on a sick duck or goose that has avian flu. We have not seen evidence of that happening, though.
How long can bald eagles live, which I think was covered in there, if I remember correctly, 25 years?
Yeah, 25, 30, 35 years in the wild. Let's see. We've got documentation of a 38-year-old bald eagle. And that's within the last 10 years. We got confirmation of that. So they can live for a fairly long time in the wild.
Kind of a combo question here. How many bald eagle nests total in New York State? And then how many on Onondaga Lake, which I don't think said any live the entire part of the year on Onondaga Lake. But
right, no nests yet at Onondaga Lake. Again, those bald eagles are just a roost sites. So they're not nesting there. They're just spending the winter there. And then they go to their breeding habitats. They go to their nests, which could be fairly close by somewhere else in the Finger Lakes region. They could go up in the Adirondacks or maybe southern Canada to breed. No nests yet at Onondaga Lake. At Montezuma, we have 15 bald eagle nests. And in New York State, we have over 400 nesting pairs of bald eagles. 400.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Last question here. Your thoughts on windmills impacting birds?
Location. That goes for just about everything, right? If a wind project were to go into an area that is not a travel corridor, a significant travel corridor for migratory birds, and it's going to have minimal impact on the ecosystem, that sounds like a good location. It's when you put wind turbines or any other type of development in a significant migratory corridor that you're going to have some negative impacts on birds.
Makes sense. Okay, I think we are at the end of our questions. And again, anybody can, Chris has his email up here. We'll have any of the attendees tonight or anybody honestly that RSVP to be in this seminar will get a follow-up email with links to this webinar on our website, links to contact Chris, links to contact us, everything you could, any way you could reach us, possible really. And then again, this will be available to rewatch really about mid-morning tomorrow. So any of the information is available again. Again, Chris, this is awesome. I appreciate this. I'm sure everyone else appreciates this too. I'm going to be insufferable with that bald eagle, the call. Anytime I hear that call, it's a red-tailed hawk, and I'm going to be, act like the smartest guy in the room because I did not know that. And that is, that's it, every single TV show, movie, all that. That's exactly the noise that they make. So it's funny. But other than that, also a ton of good information. And again, like you said, it's what a great conservation story. And that, when I seem to hear in the news and all over the place, things going wrong, it's with a concerted effort over the last 60 years, 50 years, really of effort. New York State has got, like you said, 400 nests now and growing, and Onondaga Lake's a great example of another success story. So just awesome to hear. And so it was a great success story and very cool to hear. So again, thank you very much. And thank you to everybody else for coming out. And Chris, I hope to do this again with you sometime.
Look forward to that, Brad. Thank you. Thanks all. Have a great evening.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.